I wanted to do a lore video. Felt like boss fight videos were getting a little overdone, so I picked Elmer of the Briar. So let's start with the bare bones, scratch the surface type stuff. You encounter Elmer of the Briar's true form at the Shaded Castle in Altus Plateau, but there's a chance you've already encountered him at 4 different spots in the game. An apparition of him called the Bell-Bearing Hunter spawns at the Warmaster's Shack, the Isolated Merchant in Caelid, Church of Vows, and at the Hermit Merchant's Shack in the capital. And you might think, okay, so this guy's the Lord of the Shaded Castle, and that's technically true, but not the full story. The Shaded Castle was originally controlled by House Marais. They were known in the Lands Between for being executioners. Fun fact, as I was doing research for this piece, a Redditor noted that Marais was a French word for swamp, and their castle sits on top of swampland, which I thought was a cool throwaway, but we'll get into why names are important later. The males in the Marais line are all sickly born, in Malais, the sole surviving member of House Marais becomes infatuated by Malenia. And this is an idea we saw in the village of Albinarix, that Malenia, the goddess afflicted by scarlet rot, provides sickly people with this image of hope, and that the city she is building is going to be the sanctuary for the broken, basically. And there's an apparition that you can talk to in the Shaded Castle, kind of blames this infatuation with Malenia on the downfall of House Marais. The idea that basically the guy supposed to be running things isn't, and so things were starting to go south. Sometime before the events of Elden Ring, a prisoner is brought to the Shaded Castle by the name of Elmer, and Elmer is able to get his hands on the family sword, a legendary blade called the Marais Executioner Sword, and imbue it with the magic of his homeland that allows the blade to dance through the sky. And he basically halts his own execution, slaughters everyone, breaks free, and takes the Shaded Castle on his own accord. Malenia escapes this bloodletting, but just kind of roams the grounds outside the castle. He's no longer got a real home to return to, and he's got nowhere else to be. Elmer, now freely in control of the castle, can do as he pleases, which basically just to return to a life of petty crime. The reason Elmer is known as the Bell-Bearing Hunter is that he's notorious for knocking over merchants in the Lands Between and taking their bell bearings. And not like big crime. His MO is that he rolls up early in the morning or just after midnight, appears, kills the unsuspecting merchant, takes their bell bearing, and he's gone. Rinse, repeat, etc. Luckily, his armor and his shield give us a little more insight into his backstory. So his armor states that it was made in a foreign land, and that the Briar specifically were a mark of the guilty and indicate a sentence of death. His shield tells us a little bit more, that it originated from eoichad, a land of solitary ascetics. Now, I had to look this word up. Ascetic means a person who practices severe self-discipline and abstention. So Elmer has been described as a greedy cretin by the spirit in the Shaded Castle. Grew up in a place where that kind of behavior would have been severely looked down upon. And remember earlier I said we'd get back to why names are important. Elmer is a name that comes from Old English and means noble or famous. So this is where I'm going to take some leaps for the sake of we don't know, and it's not specifically spelled out. But I can draw logical conclusions based on the evidence we have that Elmer was probably born into a pretty prominent family in the land of eoichad, because at a young age he learned the art of making swords dance through the sky. But his compulsion to steal and his compulsion for greed never fit the ideals of his family and the rest of the eoichad people. And when he went on his first robbery homicide spree, his armor was imbued with briars and he was sentenced to death. A sentence he escaped from and fled to the Lands Between. But there's one more stop on this journey. Gaul Cave in Caelid. While the Evergulls are jails in another dimension, Gaul Cave is just a regular jail, filled with cells, prisoners, guards, and when you work all the way through it, to the boss fight at the end, you'll notice there's an alternate exit to the cave. And resting on a corpse, just outside the cave, is the regalia of eoichad. A sword imbued with the same weapon ash that Elmer added to the executioner's sword of Marais. So if I can make another leap, because we don't meet anyone else in the game from eoichad. After Elmer flees his home, eoichad crumbles to the ground and is a lost civilization. Elmer has stolen the most treasured sword of their people, comes to the Land Between, continues his crime spree, gets picked up, thrown in jail, evades execution, escapes, loses the regalia of eoichad in the process, and heads north, where he continues in his ways, gets picked up again, this time taken to the shaded castle, and well, you know the rest. If you've made it this far, if you liked it, hit the like, please subscribe. Got any issues with my reasoning? Let us know in the comments section below. Have a great one. We'll see you in the next one.